Okay, so looks like I'm finally live here. First one I've done in a long time. So, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being with me today. And if you've been here for a few minutes already, waiting for this to get started, I want to thank you for your patience. Definitely a lot of learning that I just did in the last half hour or so just to get ready for today. And I want to use this space to have a real conversation about things that are important that I think a lot of us think about a lot of us struggle with in the area of leadership. And specifically today, I want to talk about a topic that I think a lot of us struggle with. And I'll tell you just a brief incident that happened that led up to this moment. So earlier this week, I had a conversation with a founder. She runs a seriously impressive company. You know, the product is innovative, the clients love them, the team is very talented. But then she said something to me that really stopped me, really kind of gave me reason for pause. And she said, Naftali, our leadership team just isn't working together anymore. It's like everybody's got their own agenda, everybody's moving in different directions, and it feels like we're not rowing consistently in a way that's going to help us grow and take the next step. And so, I was thinking about that because I work with a lot of leaders and a lot of teams, and I hear this often: a lack of alignment, a lack of consistency in terms of where people are and what they're thinking about, and is the leader in the same place with everybody else? Does everybody see the situation the way the leader does? And oftentimes the answer is no. So I want to unpack that and to understand what's really going on when we see a leadership team that is struggling. It seems amazing on paper. People have all the right credentials. They went to the right schools. They have the right experiences. And yet they are somehow underperforming. So with that, let's unpack this a little bit and let's see how we can get to a really good place as far as our topic today. And just I guess the topic would be why leadership teams struggle. Excuse me. Why leadership teams struggle, even with great people. And so let's figure out based off of that what we could learn, and see if there are opportunities ultimately for us to to make some meaningful headway in this critical area. So the first thing we need to know is that it's not about blaming, which means to say it's not this one's fault or that one's fault. It's not like somebody in particular is causing the problems that we're experiencing. Most of the time, it's not about a skill issue, a gap in learning or experience. What's normally happening here, and what gives us the biggest challenges, frankly, is that what's happening is what we might call underneath the surface. So it's not even something that's typically visible when we look at it. But nonetheless, it's something that we have to address. I think there are three top patterns with leadership teams that feel stuck or that are starting to break down. And if we could identify those patterns, talk about them a little bit, figure out what can be done to shift those patterns, then I think we may be in a really good place moving forward to help teams that are struggling to figure it out, get back, more in alignment, and be more effective. So, using the analogy of rowing, we all know that if we want to, let's say we're all in a rowboat together. There are 3 of us, 4 of us, 5 of us. It's a really long rowboat. We each have our pair of oars, and we're not rowing in the same direction. I'm pulling this way, you're pushing out that way. We have a difference in terms of how we're utilizing our oars. We know we're not going to move in the right direction. We're not going to be consistent, and we're not going to optimize. So when that happens, that's a great metaphor, I think, for leadership teams that are out of whack, leadership teams that seem to be struggling and don't know, how best to reorient. So let me give you an example of this. I was working with a nonprofit where each department was very, very committed. I actually worked with a number of nonprofits. Some of them are very large, and you start to see this siloing. You start to see this competition almost of sorts with with competing agendas, right? This one has this primary agenda, somebody else has a different primary agenda. So for example, with a nonprofit that I work with that helps many of the needy people within a community. So is it about the fiscal responsibilities and ensuring that there's enough revenue to cover expenses? Is it primarily about quality of service? Is it about morale and keeping people happy? So in this particular instance, I have one leader who's focusing on community engagement. Another is very obsessed, very focused on budgeting and making sure that the budget is properly balanced and that there's enough revenue coming in. And you can't just be in the spirit of generosity, laying out more and more and more. And then I have a third who is all about expansion and wants to see where can we introduce more products, more services, which other communities could we positively infiltrate and begin to support and help. And all of them are important, all of them are necessary. But when it comes to prioritization, if different leaders are valuing or different members of a team are valuing different things, the result often is a misalignment. And that misalignment leads to clashing, a lack of cohesion, and ultimately, lack of progress. So what happened there is by sitting everybody down, by getting everybody talking and focusing on what truly is the organization's vision. Where do we want to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years from now? How are we going to get there? What do we need to shift as far as our focus and our priorities in order to achieve that? That's what started to shift things. That's what started to move people in the right direction, and everything shifted after that. So one thing you need to think about if you're a leader is that if your team is working hard, people are showing up, they're talented, they're dedicated, but they're just not, it doesn't seem to be clicking. There's a lack of cohesion. The question is, are we working on the same goal? Do we understand the goal? Are we behind the goal? It doesn't mean that you have to build consensus consistently, but everybody ultimately does need to be working towards the same goals. And you as the leader have that responsibility. So that's an important piece right off the bat for us to consider when we talk about leadership and leadership cohesion. Another one that I think sometimes doesn't get a lot of attention, but is very important. We have team meetings and people will sit and give the updates and this and that. But it feels very kind of bland and dry and there's not much interactivity. There's not much engagement. There's not much discussion. It's almost just updating. That's not communication. I remember as a former head of school having this situation where I would come in and here was my agenda and I would list all the different things we had to talk about that day. And it was mostly me talking with occasional opportunity for teacher and administrative input, but it didn't feel like a genuine, engaging type of discussion. I scrapped that model completely and I changed it to where all of the good and welfare, all of the updates and things like that went out in advance via memo. During the meeting itself, we talked about issues. We talked about improvements. We talked about professional development and growth. Sometimes I'd have others lead those conversations. Sometimes we'd get into small groups and jigsaw and do other cooperative activities just to get everybody talking, learning, and incorporating. And this is very interesting because when leaders say to me that they talk all the time, they're constantly in meetings, communication is good, I have to go deeper with them. I say, okay, so you're talking a lot, but what's the nature of those conversations? Is it substantive? Is it getting to the root issues? Is it really pushing each other? Is everybody giving an opportunity to give constructive feedback, to share what they really, really think? And a great question that I think can be asked, you put it out there to the room, and what's something that we're not saying that needs to be said? That's a great question. Let me say it again. What's something that we're not saying that needs to be said? And by the way, as the leader, you should always be speaking last, because when the leader speaks first, you automatically shift everybody's focus and attitude in alignment, let's call it, with what the leader had said. So I'm a big believer in let the junior people speak first, let them share their opinions. Those that are senior to them will not be swayed or influenced necessarily. They certainly won't be intimidated. Then they will share their opinions, and eventually you'll have an opportunity to share your own. And then last is that when we talk about dysfunctional teams, we have to consider ego, right? The challenge is that sometimes we get really, really attached to our way of doing things, to our way of thinking. And because of that tunnel vision, and we think that's what got us there, we're able to really lock in and get things done. That approach doesn't work well when you're leading a team. Instead, what you need to be able to do is to see the other person's perspective, hear them out. We talked about that in the previous point as well during those meetings. But the idea is that when people are open-minded, when they're willing to hear different ways of doing things, you can have significant, what we might call breakthrough moments. One time I had a situation where two co-founders were butting heads with each other all the time. And one of them said to me, I realized I was fighting for my approach because I needed to feel smart, not because it was best for the company. And if you prioritize what is best for the company, for the customer, for the organization, for the product or service you're looking to create, what's ultimately in the best interest, and you're able to put your ego to the side and allow what's really necessary and important to rise to the front, rise to the top, that it can be a genuine game changer. So, I'm curious to get your feedback. What is it that you feel is really the most valuable for you? So hit me up in the comments here. If there's anything that you in our discussion, is there something happening with your leadership team right now that feels off, that feels difficult, that doesn't seem to be working? Please share that with me. I'd like to see what it is that others are struggling with, and let's see if there's anything that we can respond to together. Of course, if this is in alignment with what you're thinking, I'd love to hear that as well. Okay, so in conclusion, let's wrap up what we discussed today. Number one, leadership teams don't fall apart due to lack of talent, typically. When do they fall apart? Vision isn't shared, you're not having real conversations, and you have egos that are leading rather than the mission, rather than what really needs to happen. And we allow ourselves to put our personal agendas first. The good news is that all of it is fixable. It's just a matter of being able to see beyond your current situation, to look at new opportunities. Sometimes you need an outside facilitator, a coach to come in and provide that guidance, but it's mainly the awareness that it's usually not your people as much as the framework or the mindset in which those people are operating. So I want to thank you for being with me today. I want to thank you for listening and for hearing these ideas. I certainly would love to get your feedback. And if you have ideas, if you have topics that you'd like for me to discuss, hit me up in the comments, and let's certainly have some additional conversation about very important leadership topics. Thanks again, and have a great day.